It's not often that an author can claim their work has something for everyone. Most of the time, that phrase is used to hawk romance novels or those terrible 90s movies where the guy gets turned into a woman and then back again, usually while learning some kind of life lesson about the importance of friendship or accepting others for who they are. The two immediately hit it off, and they go home together. And also why he looks so young, even though he's in his 40s. You see, Tony spent most of his life alone. He travels the world buying art until one day he's bitten by a woman who turns out to be a vampire. Tony tries to kill her, but she manages to escape before succumbing to the bite. And that's when Tony shows up again to warn Peter that John is planning on killing him. Realizing that Peter is now cursed to become a vampire himself, Tony bites him on the neck, hoping to ease his suffering. It works too, at least for a while. And soon after, Peter and Tony leave the mansion to go live in a cabin in the woods. Really, they read just a lame attempt to cash in on the whole slash and dash craze that was popular at the time. And honestly, I'd have preferred the werewolves. They engage in lots of sexual activity, including anal sex and necrophilia, and they spend their days looking out a window and wondering what the hell they're re-gone do now. Well, that kind of came as a surprise to me, because Whitley Strieber is best known for his science fiction horror novels featuring terrifying monsters that protrude from the darkness to eat people. And yet, here he was making a book that would make Stephen King blush. If you want to watch the movie, it's available on Shudder with a subscription or on Amazon Prime for rent or purchase. And as always, thanks for watching. I wondered if maybe he wrote the book under a pseudonym or something, so I checked. Turns out Whitley Strieber is also the author of The Hunger. Who knew? So Peter runs away, goes to the bookstore, buys a copy of The Exorcist, and comes home to find the house empty. I mean, he clearly has a knack for writing erotic scenes, and I doubt he'd deny that. But given the themes of his other books, I doubt he'd admit it, too. So I did what any good researcher would do, and emailed him, politely asking if that was the case. He never responded, but I think the answer is yes. And a better excuse for shirtless dudes to stare longingly at each other. Well, for starters, Catherine Deneuve is 40 years old at the time, and playing a teenager. I know. Don't ask me why. All I know is that she looks hot as hell doing it. Also, the movie's a lot more sexually charged than the book. And I think that's partially because of the whole age difference thing. I mean, Catherine Deneuve playing a horny teenager. Come on, it's practically begging for controversy. It was adapted into a film in 1983, directed by Tony Maylam, and starring Catherine Deneuve as a wealthy socialite named Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Yeah, really. If you ever wanted to see a movie based on a novel you've never heard of, directed by a director you've then never heard of, and starring one of the most famous actresses of all time, well, you're in luck because you can currently stream it on Shudder. He spends the night hiding in a closet, and the next day he learns that both John and his wife have vanished. Not long after, Peter falls violently ill. His vision begins to darken, and his mouth starts filling with blood. Tony finds him in this state and reveals that John was a vampire. She eventually returns, though, seeking revenge against Tony and bringing along her equally attractive and equally vengeful daughter. But Tony kills them both. And here's the kicker. When he does, he becomes a vampire himself. This is where we get our first real glimpse at Peter's personality, which is best described as observational. And instead of leaving Peter for dead, he drives him home, saves him from being eaten by his own dog, and calls up his publisher, John Mallory. Oh, and I should mention that she's also missing half her face. So naturally, Peter decides to make some breakfast and write a bit of his new novel, which he describes as being about a killer child. After he finishes that, he takes Miriam's body out to the pond in their backyard and dumps it in there, even though he knows it's probably not a good idea since John's private investigator. Detective Kruger has been searching the area for her all night. Tony warns John to watch out for Miriam, whom he implies is a threat to Peter, and he disappears. A few days pass, and Peter starts noticing things around the house that don't make sense. Like, why is the phone ringing whenever he picks it up? There's nothing but silence on the other end. He also finds strange scratches on his skin and begins losing blood from his nostrils. Meanwhile, the police find Miriam's body, and John hires a priest to perform an exorcism on the house. Father Callahan, the priest, quickly determines that the house is haunted, but refuses to perform the ritual unless Peter and John pay him $200 and a bottle of Remy Martin. Yeah, I guess priests aren't the only ones with price tags on their services. Why exactly Miriam is a threat to Peter isn't clear. It's possible she sucked his blood. It's also possible that he just didn't want anyone else at that party. We're never told. As they make love, Peter notices Tony's nipples, his muscular legs, his moist tongue, and also that he's a little shorter than he seemed like at the party. In fact, Peter thinks men always seem shorter in bed, which is a quote so profound and incisive. I'm sure it was lifted straight from the pages of Cosmo. But The Hunger by Whitley Strieber actually does have something for everyone. It's got vampires, werewolves, sexy people having sex, an evil rich lady who may or may not be immortal, incest, necrophilia, sadistic torture, and a guy whose head explodes at the end. And it was written in 1983. So just imagine how much more stuff it could possibly have if it wasn't made during the video nasty era. So, what's it actually about? Well, The Hunger tells the story of a young couple, Peter and Miriam, who find themselves in need of blood money after Miriam gets pregnant. Peter is a writer who has just published his first novel, and he and Miriam live with his publisher, John Mallory, in a mansion in Long Island, New York. Now, this sounds like it might be a period piece, but I assure you the only thing period about this book is the music. Just because the main character is writing a novel doesn't mean he is not a product of the early 80s. For proof of that, look no further than the fact that his first published book is called The Metamorphosis of Death, which is presumably about a corpse who goes through puberty. That's right. I said corpse who goes through puberty. Anyway, the novel opens with Peter and Miriam at a friend's party where Peter meets a mysterious man named Tony. While Peter is busy being turned into a human pincushion, Tony gives him the backstory that explains why he is so great in bed. Now, despite being a murderous bloodsucker, Tony is still a stand-up guy. The next morning, Peter wakes up in his bed, naked except for his shoes and socks, and finds Miriam lying dead at his feet. At this point, the plot of The Hunger becomes difficult to summarize without giving away major spoilers. So I'm going to start doing my best impression of Roger Ebert. Eventually, Father Callahan and Detective Kruger leave, both convinced that Miriam's death was the work of Satan himself. Tony knew this because he'd seen John drinking the blood of one of his secretaries. In a way, The Hunger is kind of like a lost Twilight novel, except with less sparkle, more murder. So what makes this version of the story different from the book? Another major change is that the werewolves from the book are replaced by a pair of sadistic gay aristocrats who wear leather masks and call themselves the Brothers Grimm. But let's talk about sex for a minute. Remember how I mentioned earlier that the book was very sexually charged? And while reading the book, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe the reason Strieber wrote it was to prove he could. If you want to read The Hunger yourself, I recommend checking it out from your local library or picking up a used copy online.